relax, and use headphones. Welcome back, dear traveler, to History Chibi. And today we're going to take a look at daily life in ancient and modern Athens. I go to my local library a lot. It's my favorite place, and picked up this book. So let's take a look at what's inside. First, I'll just briefly go over the table contents. We have the introduction, the rise of Athens, including early Athens, Athens' Agora, a growing city, Athenians and religion, stitchers of songs, the Olympic Games, and Solon's laws. Let's just go through the first chapter and see where it takes us from there. This is introduction. Here we go. Athens is the capital of Greece, a southeastern European nation on the Mediterranean Sea. A beautiful mountainous country, Greece boasts hundreds of islands and 9,000 miles of shoreline. The Aegean Sea, part of the Mediterranean Sea, separates Greece from Asia. Athens sits near the Aegean coast on Attica, a peninsula about 40 miles wide and 50 miles long. Mountains ring the city, where sleek high-rises share the skyline with crumbling ancient structures. Athens began as a small village, but by the 5th century BC, Athens was a Mediterranean power. The Athenian navy ruled the sea, and Athens was a major trade center. Democracy, the system of government in which citizens vote to make political decisions, flowered in Athens. But Athens was destined to become a conqueror's prize. In the 4th century BC, King Philip II, father of Alexander the Great, led the Macedonians, the Greek-speaking people from north of Athens, to overtake the city. Alexander the Great spread Athenian culture across parts of Europe, North Africa, and Asia. Roman rule followed in 148 BC, and Athens continued to be a cultural and intellectual center. Athens was swept into the Ottoman Empire from the 15th century until 1832, when the city was named capital of a new nation, Greece. Over the centuries, Athens' art, architecture, philosophy, literature, and politics have deeply influenced the Western world and continue to do so. So here we have modern Athens spilling out over the rocky landscape below the Acropolis. Early Athens. About 5000 BC, Stone Age herders built simple huts at the top of the Acropolis, a massive limestone hill that stands in the center of modern Athens. They may have originated the name Athens, a word not of Greek origin. The first Greek-speaking people, the Mycenaeans, emigrated to the area that would become Greece. Soon, the Mycenaeans occupied the entire region, as well as the Mediterranean island of Crete. Around 1250 BC, the Mycenaeans arrived in Athens, about 100 miles from their capital of Mycenae. Early Athenians may have worshipped nature in caves in the cliff. In a cleft at the Acropolis' center, they dug a steep, stair-lined well for water. Steep walls protected the settlement, which was ruled by a king. The Dorians, a fierce people from northern Greece, overran the region in 1100 BC, but spared the well-defended city of Athens. In 1200 BC, the Mycenaean culture collapsed, and the Greek Dark Ages began. Mycenaean writing was forgotten, and some cities were abandoned, but by 800 BC, Athens rebounded as a powerful polis or city-state with a sizable population. Here is an illustration of the Acropolis, which means highest city. You can see the line of defense walls surrounding the base of the mountain. A royal sacrifice. Legend says that the Dorians tried to take Athens, but a prophecy foretold that the Dorians would lose if they killed Athens' king. So the king of Athens disguised himself as a peasant, went to the Dorian camp, and provoked some soldiers into killing him. When the Dorians learned they had killed the Athenian king, they lost heart and gave up trying to conquer Athens. This is about Athens' Agora. As Athens grew, the Acropolis became overcrowded. People moved to the land surrounding the hill, which remained the site of religious temples. The Agora, a wide open space in the middle of town, was the heart of the city. The government forbade people to build permanent houses or shops in the Agora, but merchants and artisans set up temporary stalls where they sold their produce and crafts. farmers from the countryside sold olives and other farm produce in one section of the Agora. Herders sold donkeys, oxen, pigs, and sheep in another area. Shoppers could buy everything from wine and weapons to slaves in the marketplace. The Agora was ringed by narrow streets lined with shops, government offices, temples, and public buildings such as sports centers and stadiums. Nearby, small homes were built around courtyards. At one end of the Agora, a long building with a roof held up by pillars housed more merchant stalls. The center of the crowded, noisy Agora was a gathering place for the men of Athens, who usually shopped for their households. The countryside beyond the congested city was also part of Athens. Quiet farms covered the hillsides. Tiny villages of crude stone homes were strung along dirt roads. Eventually, Athens extended over the entire Attica Peninsula. You can see the farms on the outskirts of the Agora. And you can see this wall of protection right here around the base of this Acropolis. This next part is about a growing city. By the late 7th century BC, the city's population soared. So did the importance of farming and intercity trade. The Greeks considered farming a noble pursuit. The great Athenian scholar Aristotle once wrote that agriculture should be ranked first among professions because it is just. Most farmers, however, lived less than noble existences. They rented their land from wealthy Athenian landlords and often could keep little of what they produced. Some farmers who couldn't pay off their debts were sold into slavery. Yet, Athenian farmers loved and respected their land. They worked long days and lived simply. Most raised the grapes and olives that thrived in Greece's sandy soil and mild climate. Athenians loved grapes, which they ate fresh and also used to make wine. They crushed the grapes by foot and stored the juice until it fermented into wine. People ate olives or made them into olive oil, which Athenians used for cooking, beauty products, and lamp fuel. Athens' mountainous terrain was unsuitable for growing enough grain to make bread for everyone, so Athenian merchants began to trade wine, olive oil, painted pottery, and silver for wheat and barley from Egypt and Russia. They also imported spices, hides, timber, copper, iron, and slaves. With trade booming out of the nearby port of Piraeus, which was connected to Athens by road, Athenians became master sailors. Merchant ships were about 100 feet long and could be navigated with sails or oars. A typical ship could travel 50 to 60 miles a day. Many men became sailors, but in those days, long before the invention of the compass, sailing across the broad Mediterranean Sea could be dangerous. The Greeks usually tried to hug the coast, keeping land in sight. Even so, many merchant ships were lost to the bottom of the sea. You can see this is a very busy port with all of the sailors and traders from different parts of the world coming here. This is the walled roadway connecting to Athens. This is about Athenians and religion. Athenians believed in many gods and goddesses to whom they appealed for advice and for protection from war, disease, and human hardship. Athenians prayed before meals, court proceedings, and government sessions. Athenian children first learned about religion through Greek myths told by storytellers and family members. Chronicles of life on Mount Olympus, a real mountain that was the gods' legendary home, produced colorful, entertaining tales. The Athenians saw their gods as beings who differed little from humans. Gods exhibited the full range of human behaviors, including rage, jealousy, revenge, and selfishness. But the gods were immortal. Children participated in family religious rituals at an altar in their homes' courtyards. The head of the household, who was the oldest living male, led the family's religious observances. Sometimes he poured a libation or an offering of food and wine upon the altar in order to please a deity and to encourage him or her to answer the family's prayer. Athenians built many temples to honor their gods and goddesses. The Parthenon, a temple built in the 5th century on top of the Acropolis, housed a colossal statue of the city's patron goddess, Athena. The ivory-covered wooden statue was 39 feet tall, with glittering gemstones for eyes. The statue wore a golden robe that weighed 2,500 pounds. The Athenians believed that Athena provided their city with special protection. And to ensure that her protection continued, the Athenians made sacrifices of goats, sheep, or birds. During these rituals, Athenians burned part of the animal on the altar to please the god or goddess, then ate the rest of the meat. Priests and priestesses, appointed by election or birth, served in the temples. At times, young boys and girls were selected to help the clergy by serving as acolytes or assistants. The position honored a child's family. Here, we have an ancient statue of Zeus, king of the gods, as he prepares to launch a thunderbolt. Ancient pottery art, shown here, shows a family observing religious rituals at home. Gods and goddesses. The Greeks worshipped many gods and goddesses. There were 12 primary deities believed to live on Mount Olympus, Greece's highest mountain. They were Zeus, king of the gods; Hera, wife of Zeus and goddess of marriage; Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. Apollo, god of light, truth, and music. Ares, god of war. Artemis, goddess of the hunt and youth. Athena, goddess of wisdom, justice, and warfare. Demeter, goddess of grains and fruit. Dionysus, god of wine and fertility. Hephaestus, the god's blacksmith. Hermes, the divine messenger. And Poseidon, god of the sea. Now, let's learn about stitchers of songs. Storytelling answered Athenians' need for entertainment and preserved the stories of their history. Early Athenians listened to the stories of the bards, or storytellers, known in Greek as the stitchers of songs. Crowds gathered in the Agora and at parties to hear bards recite long, detailed stories and poems from memory. Some bards could recite for hours at a time. Bards accompany their words by strumming on a lyre or a lute, two popular string instruments. Dressed in flowing robes and sporting beards, the bards spoke carefully to demonstrate respect for the stories. The greatest Greek bard was a poet named Homer, who is believed to have been blind. Homer may have been born in Athens, although 6 other cities also claim him as their own. He was very popular. Scholars believe that Homer lived at the end of the Greek Dark Ages in the 8th century BC. Homer created 2 great literary works, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Gods and monsters play big parts in these heroic tales, parts of which may be based on historical fact. But although Homer is credited as their author, he probably did not invent these stories himself. They most likely have roots in the myths and legends of the Mycenaean age. So, here we have a bard playing on his lyre while telling his tale to the crowd. Epics of the ages. The Iliad and the Odyssey, 2 of the oldest and greatest epic stories of Western literature, are still widely read in modern times. The Iliad chronicles the Trojan War, fought in part over beautiful Queen Helen of Troy, whose face launched 1,000 ships. The Odyssey describes the magical adventures of a Greek warrior named Odysseus. The stories include his escapes from the Cyclops, a one-eyed giant, Circe, the enchantress who turned Odysseus's men into swine, and the hauntingly beautiful but deadly voices of the sirens. This next part is called the Olympic Games. Athenians loved sports and athletic competition. The The process of developing both a sound mind and a sound body was a central element of Athenian culture. The Greek motto that a socially undeveloped person could neither swim nor spell shows that people were judged by both their mental and physical abilities. The men of Athens attended a gymnasium every day. Here they participated in physical exercises and sports, including running, boxing, wrestling, calisthenics, chariot racing, and throwing the discus and spear. With the exception of chariot racers, all players were nude. Athens' finest athletes trained hard for the Olympic Games. Held every 4 years, the games were so important that warring city-states called a truce when it was time for the games. Spectators of the Olympic Games may have numbered as many as 20,000 men and boys at a time. Young boys competed in foot races, wrestling matches, and the long jump after the main events of the Olympic Games. Women and girls were forbidden to watch or to take part in the Olympic Games. But every 4 years, a competition called the Horea, named for the goddess Hera, was held for female athletes. At other times, Athenian women enjoyed the game of knucklebone, which was played with the ankle bones of cows or goats. The participants tossed the little bones into the air one at a time and tried to catch them on the back of their hands. Here we have the chariot races, which was very popular in the early Olympic Games. Knucklebone up top is one of the everyday games that was played in the street or courtyard. Games will be games. Athenian children enjoyed games still popular these days. They played with terracotta dolls, clay figurines, and toy tops. They liked leapfrog, tug-of-war, tag, marbles, and a variety of ball games. Board games were popular with rich and poor alike. In fact, game boards were carved into the stone seats of some Athenian auditoriums. This page was rather interesting. I didn't know a few of the things here. Let's see what's next. This is about Solon's laws. Let's see what they're about. Most Athenian men were farmers, merchants, or skilled workers. Women managed the homes and raised children. The aristocracy ruled early Athens, but by the 7th century BC, kings had been replaced by a board of 9 officers called archons. Noblemen appointed the archons. After their time of rule was up, archons became life members of the Areopagus, a council that met on the hill of Ares in Athens. Some archons were severe. Draco, who ruled in 621 BC, established harsh penalties for lawbreaking. He was the first to write down the laws of Athens. A reform-minded leader, Solon, was appointed as archon in 594 BC. Solon was a just and distinguished scholar and poet. He abolished many of the draconian laws cancelled agricultural debts and mortgages and freed some farmers who had been enslaved for not paying their debts. He encouraged Athenians who had fled the city to return home again. By showing people that it was possible for political changes to make life better, Solon helped to lay the ground for a new political system, which would be called democracy. So here we have council members of the Areopagus debating Athenian issues. This is a statue of Solon, one of Athens' great archons, who relaxed many laws and encouraged political participation. To the people I have given such privilege as is enough, neither taking away nor adding to their honor, while those who had power and were famed for their wealth, for them I took care they should suffer no injury. I stood holding out my strong shield over both, and I did not allow either to triumph unjustly. Solon. Okay, this marks the next chapter of this book, but if you like this, let me know and I'll continue reading the next chapter. But for tonight, I hope this was relaxing and that you found some interesting facts about ancient Athens. May you have a cozy night in and sleep well. And I'll see you in the next one. Good night.